not revenge. Those are powerful words. That video went viral. She's on the show right now. Let me welcome to the show, Reverend. Yes, that's right. Kimberly Jones. Welcome to the Karen Hunter Show, sister. Yes.
How are you?
I am fine. You were righteously indignant that day.
You sound like my mom. That's what she said.
Listen, I think, if you come from a passionate people, you understand every single word that came out of your mouth and the intentions behind it. I think people can cherry pick around the burn down thing and get caught up and hung up and you condoning that and not understand the passion from which that comes and the history that also poured forth out of your mouth. Talk about where you were in that moment and what transpired for you to speak like that.
Well, my friend whose documentary that is, David Jones, he asked me to come down and do some man on the street with him that day. I had been on the front lines protesting. He had been in different places for me, capturing things. And he said, "You're really good at man on the street. Can you come do some man on the street for me that day?" And so we were going to spend the whole day there. And we ended up in a protest later. But at that point, there were people doing cleanup from the riot. And so there were all of these people out there who had invested their own money. They had bought things to clean up the walls and all of this stuff, and they're out there cleaning up the streets. Now, flashback 6 months before that, I had tried to put together a cleanup crew to clean up my neighborhood in Bankhead. And I had gotten the city to bring out a dumpster. I had gotten some people to volunteer trash bags and all of that stuff. I had 4 people show up for the cleanup. So we were only able to get like 2 or 3 streets cleaned. And so now I'm out here downtown Atlanta around a bunch of property and buildings that black people don't own. And you have all of these bourgeois black people down there who spent their own money to clean up a community that's not theirs because I guess, I don't know, they wanted to show mass that they was the good black folks. I don't know what was on their mind. And it honestly, sis, it set me off. It set me off, and I started talking, and he turned the camera on, and that's the video y'all got.
I like plain spoken people.
Yes.
And I know because this is how we got here. I've had so many conversations over the last couple of weeks with white folk, and I said the black people in your life have been lying to you about what's really going on. They've been smiling in your face because maybe they don't want to offend you. Maybe they like their little job and their little check that they get, and they want to make sure that they go up the corporate ladder. So they're never going to tell you how they really feel about you or what is going on in this country. So a lot of Americans are just, I didn't know it was like this. They're just surprised and they're blindsided because we have never really spoken our pain. We've been taught to laugh in a barrel. We've been taught to stuff our feelings and to smile and get by and to tap dance our way through to whatever success looks like. And when we do it, we're angry. We're angry, we get labeled, and then we got to carry that burden throughout life, right? So now here we are. The world is on fire. And in order to fix it, we're going to have to swallow some harsh truths. As a pastor, tell me about your background, Kimberly. How did you come to the Lord?
So it all started when I was younger. I'm one of 7 kids. So my parents, to keep us all on the track, they had to keep us in a lot of programming, a lot of after school programs. And 2 of the places that my mother sent me was I spent a lot of afternoons at the DuSable Museum in Chicago. I'm originally from Chicago, and also at Operation Push Rainbow Coalition. And so there was this amazing reverend there who has since passed, Reverend Willie T. Barrow. She was an awesome woman, and she gave this lecture one time about the economics of slavery and the ripple effect of it. And so I memorized that speech, and probably from 5th grade through 8th grade, in any oratory competition, that is what I did, was her economic speech. And so I've always carried that with me, and my mother always nurtured a love of community in all of her kids. And, volunteering was just something that you did, that you were responsible for. And so now as a writer, I'm a young adult writer. So when I'm touring, I'm not doing big halls. I'm doing high school gymnasiums. And since my work is about race relations in America, it's funny because people are like, where did she come from? I'm like, well, I've been on the road. I had 2 national tours. I've been on the road talking to your children, having this same conversation with your children for the past year and a half. And so that's kind of my elevation into what I'm doing.
talk about the language, because I think some folk get, they clutch their pearls. I don't tend to use those words just because if I do use it, I really mean it.
I really meant it.
I know you did. That's why I said it. So I've never been that angry on these airwaves, right? And there are people though that'll say, how does a person use those words and line up with the word? Talk a little bit about that, because I need us to divorce ourselves from a lot of things that we have been conditioned to hold on to that really serves us no purpose.
Yeah, I mean, I'm a firm believer that the way that I speak is cultural, not remedial, right? It's not a reflection of my intellect. It is just the passion. And, just even in that, a lot of people are bothered by the fact that I don't do a whole lot of code switches. But I feel like, why do I need to do that? Because I'm a Black girl. We're the architects of school. We've taught everybody what's cool since the beginning of time. Every bit of language we use, people regurgitate it and tell us at the advent of it that it's not good enough. And then they utilize it and make money off of it. I mean, if anybody has ever introduced anybody in an audience, they'll say, put their hands together. I bet you they don't know that comes from 1920s jazz slang. You know what I mean? And so it's so embedded in the language right now. I don't want to see one more housewife talking about wearing bling and I bet you they don't know they got that from Lil Wayne. You know what I mean? So it's like we are the architects of the language. We make the language interesting and cool. And in terms of the way I speak, in terms of using the profanity, like people needed a wake up call. Like I don't understand. That's why I said what I said at the end about they're lucky that we want equality and not revenge. The fact that our oppressor consistently thinks that we are supposed to buck their oppression in a way that is pleasing to them is absolutely ridiculous to me. I don't have to check in with you and be like, oh, is the way I'm fighting against your oppression working for you? If not, maybe I can recalculate and think of ways to make it more convenient for you. Growth is going to come from discomfort, and it's time we make some people uncomfortable.
I
have
you.
Chills.
Oh
I
my
have,
God.
like literal chills going down my spine. Like all the hair on my arms just stood straight up. Like what you just said, Reverend Jones, what you just said about not code switching, not because our language is cultural, not remedial, like being grounded in the power of cultural authority is one of the most powerful positions that we as Black people can be in. When you are able to stand firmly footed on exactly who you are and speak from that truth with the ancestral blessing, because that, to me, yeah, I heard the profanity, but I also heard anointing, right? I heard divine communication, and we have to be able to see with our spirit and hear with our spirit and not with our ears, which have been trained to be culturally attuned to that which makes white people more comfortable. To speak with words that have been trained to make white people feel better, because our tongues could literally be cut out of our mouth. There is a power position when you are able to stand firmly rooted in who you are as an African descendant person, as a Black girl, and know that and speak from that. Can't nobody mess with that. I have hair standing up on my arms as we speak.
I just want her to keep talking.
Please.
What else you want to say? Just keep talking. Lord Jesus. I mean, really. I
do want to ask you about the action that you said you had organized 6 months prior, that you had done all the groundwork about getting people out to the community and only 4 people showed up. Was that something that, as a result of what we're seeing right now, do you think that people might be more open to embracing a project like that now than they might have been 6 months ago? In your community, not in the downtown Target community.
Yeah, I for sure believe. I feel like if I put out a call for that now, we'd have 40 or 50 people come out. And I think that part of it is this was an awakening, not just for, the global community, which it definitely was, but I think this was awakening for us, because I think far too many of us became comfortable in our lives, especially those who kind of got out a little bit, who, were middle class or upper middle class and feeling like the systems were safe for them. It's like a lot of people don't, they don't connect the dot that Trayvon was in that community because his father was a homeowner in that community. You know what I mean? And so we have to connect those dots. We have bought into the narrative that they want to put out, that all of these children were children that were disadvantaged, and many of them weren't. And so I think that middle class and upper middle class are waking up to the fact that, like, this could affect anybody. This could be anybody's child. This could be anybody's son. And so because of that, we're getting more connected. I've seen more posts about circulating the Black dollar and buying Black and investing in Black businesses than I've seen in my lifetime.
Me too, and I'm here to use this platform to magnify that message. KimJonesWrites.com. KimJonesWrites.com is where you can find all things Kim Jones. I'm Not Dying With You Tonight. Tell us about that book.
So it's interesting. I co-authored that book with a dear friend of mine, Geely Siegel, who's white, and it was actually her idea. She saw a news clip. This was in 2015. She saw a news clip after the unrest in Baltimore after the death of Freddie Gray. And there was a news story about how Frederick Douglass High School found out about the protest and sent the kids home early, but the police and everybody had already shut down public transportation, and that's how most of those kids get home. So the kids got trapped behind a police barricade. And so the news didn't care about that. Nobody circulated back. She and I searched around, couldn't find out what happened to those kids. And we're both moms, so we're just kind of like worried, like, you know, what happened to those babies? What happened to those kids? And so she came to me and she was like, I think we should write a story about some kids, you know, trying to survive the night. She said, but as a white woman, I have no business writing that story. It's not my voice. It's not my lived experience. But I was wondering if you would be interested in writing it with me. And that's when we came up with the concept, like, okay, we'll make two girls survive the night, one black and one white, and you can write the white girl's voice and I'll write the black girl's voice, and we'll talk about how differently they see the same night and how their lived experiences affect it. And the thing about it is, you know, I'm a hood girl. I've been working in programming for young women who are hood girls, and I've been working on the literacy side with them. And I could not get these girls to read because they did not see themselves reflected on the page, because the narrative we had put out was that the only way we need to expand the canon was with, you know, middle-class girls. And I think we should have stories for those girls. I love authors like Danielle Clayton, who's writing for books for those girls, like The Bells and stuff like that, and Nick Stone, who's writing books for girls like that. But I'm like, the problem is we've created this narrative where girls who are still marginalized, we're telling them they're not good enough unless they change who they are. And so when I finally started finding books for these girls that were written in, I don't know what they want to call it, slang, Ebonics, AAC, whatever term they came up with.
It's cultural anthropology, like Zora Neale Hurston.
Exactly. Yeah, I'm like, whatever shenanigans they came up with this week. You know, when I started finding books in their language, I got them to start reading, and not just reading, but started to be able to nurture a love of reading to them and have them have a passion for reading. So I made a vow and commitment to them that this first book, I was going to write it in their voice, and that they were going to be the hero of the story, that it was going to not be a white savior narrative, that the white girl couldn't survive the night unless she stayed with this little black girl and she understood it, and that this little black girl from the hood, her lived experience is the only reason that they survived the night. So I started going to schools and having this conversation, and then I would get to schools, and the kids that knew I was coming, that had read my book, had maybe seen interviews and stuff with me, they would make me these buttons and T-shirts that said, "Hood girls can be heroes too." So I would get to schools, and all these kids would have stuff for me that said, "Hood girls can be heroes too." And so, that would, and the critics hated it. If y'all go online and y'all read the reviews, the critics were basically like, wipe your butt with this book. They said the black characters were ignorant. And I'm like, you're not reading, because there's a lot of nuance and there's a lot of love in that community. And the Miss Johnson who's looking out, and Cousin Marcus who takes the journey with them because he loves his little cousin. There's all this love, the same kind of love we have in the hood. And all y'all wanted to see was the language on the page to decide to depict these people as ignorant. So even though the critics hated it, it didn't matter, because the kids loved it. And the kids were reading it. And I was getting calls from teachers and emails from teachers saying, I couldn't get my kids to read anything this year, but they read I'm Not Down With You Tonight. Can you please come talk to my school? So we ended up having to do 2 national tours to cover just a third of the schools that were asking for us to come. And unlike most authors, we predominantly went to Title I schools, and we made sure those kids had the book free of charge when we got there.
I'm reminded of so many things, but one thing that Drew McCaskill says, when you double down on black, there is an ability for you to dominate. And I hear like you saying, I'm committed to these girls. I'm doubling down on speaking our language, communicating our language, and putting our language in the written word, which is going to be offensive to the critics, because the critics can't read that language. It's like a foreign language to them. And all they see is a bunch of apostrophes and ignorance, because that's how their eyes have been culturally attuned. But that's the beauty of rejecting what the critics say and doubling down on commitment to your community.
Kimberly Jones, help me deal with this right now. As we move into our full selves, there's going to be a whole lot of white folk, so-called white folk, who are going to be very uncomfortable. And when you mention your white friends, how do we express to folk that our love of self is not a hatred of them.
Yeah.
Because there's the assumption if I love me, if I'm rooting for everybody that's black, if I'm doing this thing, that somehow I hate you.
Right.
How do we express that?
Well, I think the main thing is I'm like, I don't understand why language that is so simple is so difficult for so many people. I mean, being pro-black does not necessarily mean that you're anti-white. I don't have to be anti-you in order to be pro-me. And the thing about it is I saw this amazing meme of all things that I absolutely love. And it was somebody's house was on fire, and it was a white girl who made the meme, and somebody's house was on fire, and she was like, come on, everybody, we need to get together and put the fire out of this house. And then there was another version of her standing to a house not on fire and was like, well, what about my house? Don't all houses matter? And she's like, yeah, but this house is on fire. And they're like, yeah, I understand that, but my house also matters. Why can't you come put out the fire in my house? And she's like, because there is no fire at your house. The fire is over here. And that's the thing that they have to understand. This 400 years of systemic racism, oppression, brutalization is a house almost burned to the ground. And so we don't even have the space anymore to put the fire out. The fire is over. There's been nothing left but rubble and debris for a very, very long time. So it's time to rebuild. And so they have proven to us that they are not vested and not interested in rebuilding us. So we have to rebuild ourselves, which means we have to have a very raw and upfront communication of, I'm rooting for everything black. I have to rebuild my house. I have to look out for my brother. I have to be concerned about my sister. And if you can't understand that and you don't want to come over here and pick up some bricks, that's cool for you, but I'm going to keep doing what I'm doing. And the ones of you who do want to help, that's cool. And we don't need any more allies. We don't need any more people that are making posts and all of that. Dr. Breonna McDaniel says there's a distinct difference between an ally and accomplice, and the year of the ally is up. Either you're going to be an accomplice or we're not concerned about you at all. If you're not ready to get in the dirt and the bricks and the mud with us and do the work, we don't need you.
I need a tambourine.
I'm going to a break. There's a lot of food on the plate.